Hey, it's Greg here at MaritimeGardening.com, and I'm continuing on with my sort of a series, I guess. I don't know how many videos I'm going to make on this, but I'm expanding the area of my garden that's enclosed with a fence, and I'm actually removing the fence off the fence right here. I'm actually taking the fence off the posts. I'm going to pull the posts out of the ground, and I'm going to reposition them. I got a little bit more fencing, and I'm going to do all that. So I'm going to walk you through that process. We're doing everything on the cheap here and trying to avoid going to the hardware store and that sort of thing. And so I've sort of fashioned a tool. I didn't want to use a good screwdriver to pull these things out. The fence, I think they're called fence nails or whatever. They look like a giant staple sort of thing, and they're kind of difficult to hammer in. But you need something relatively stiff and relatively strong but pointy to pull them out. So I just got this 6-inch nail. I filed it to something resembling a kind of semi-flattened point, right? Relatively steep. And I just put a little bit of inner tube rubber around it with some electrical tape. What can't you do with electrical tape? To hold on it with my hand, so it's not, it's just, I don't know, totally not necessary, but since I'm going to be doing a bit of it, I thought, why not make it just a little bit less inclined to do. It took a minute. It took 1 minute to decrease the amount of fatigue this has in my hand. So let me show you how this thing works. All right, so hopefully that's coming across okay in the camera. I got one of the staples right here, just pounding her in. Nails sort of acting like a bit of a wedge, right? So let me zoom that back out. So by virtue of this having a wedge shape, by pounding it in, that wedge action actually pries it out the first, 1/8 inch or a few millimeters, whatever, and then you just pry up on it and pull it out. Pretty simple. So I'm removing all the ones in the middle first, and then I'll pop the ends off, and then I'll start trying to pull these things up. They actually, because of the time of the year, and because there's a bit of frost and heave and stuff on the ground, and it's semi-frozen, semi-thawed, these are actually kind of loose. So I think they'll pull out okay, and I've actually, if I can't pull them out by hand, which I think might be the case, I've got an idea of a way I can sort of pry these out really simple, just using a bit of rope and a bit of leverage and a little bit of physics. So yeah, let's get these out. Doing this reminds me of a job I had when I was like 14, or I think it was 14, where I was working down in the downtown for a painting company, and a teenager summer job sort of thing, and they were staining all of these were they wooden posts, I guess they had, so these posts had signs stapled on them, like all kinds of staples in the wood, and the boss gave me a pair of pliers and he said, you got to pull all these staples out, that's your job for the next week. And of course, after the first day, I had blisters on all my fingers from pulling these things out with pliers. And then one day I grabbed a flat-headed screwdriver out of someone's toolbox and realized that I could just, sort of pound it in and pry it out using leverage. And that was a real learning experience, because it was just one of those days where I realized that just because someone's older than you or they're your boss doesn't necessarily mean that they did really well in physics in high school. Right? So, leverage matters. Leverage helps. So, because the kids are home these days and they're not in school right now, I've been taking advantage of any opportunity I can when they're outside to sort of teach them something something practical, hands-on type thing. And I was pulling stumps out of the ground using like basically a dead tree as a huge lever. And when I started the thing, I asked my kids, do you think Daddy could have the strength of a giant? And they're like, no, that's impossible. And then I was showing them all the things I could lift using, a 25-foot long tree as a lever. They thought that was pretty cool. Of course, I had to keep getting them to stand back because they wanted to stand right over it, and not safe, right? But anyway, I gotta move these cold frames out of the way. I'm actually gonna break these up and repurpose them. I think I'm done with the whole cold frame. The hoop house is a cold frame anyway, but it's mobile and portable and modular, and I just prefer it. Anyway, I don't want to get a diatribe about that. Main thing is I gotta get these out of the ground, and a little bit of leverage I think will probably pop these out no problem. Let's see. Just use the old fence post. Pop under. Up we go. Strength of a giant. Boy, the soil looks amazing in these. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break these up and I'm going to turn them perpendicular to the way they were facing, and have them go down this way, in line with the other gardens in my bed. But I'm going to take them apart, probably using a reciprocating saw, and just sort of reshape them so they're more in that 4x8. I think they're going to have to be 4x6 given the spacing here, but that sort of 4 foot by something dimension that I like. So I should be able to get everything I need out of these to do the strip, depending, really depends on how rotten the wood is and that sort of thing. But we'll see how it goes. The main reason I'm popping them out right now is I need to get at the fence staples that are sort of at the lower levels here where I can't reach. I often get the question of how I keep smaller critters out of the garden, and mainly rabbits. Squirrels and mice and things like that they're going to happen, and not a lot you can do about that for the most part. They don't really do that much damage. But this fence is 2-inch by 4-inch fencing, and basically the reason I chose that type of fencing is because it's the cheapest one. The finer the meshes on the fence, the more you have to pay if you want to have the heavy galvanized stuff that lasts multiple years, like a long time, right? So all I do is I put this a chicken wire, right? Just cheap galvanized chicken wire. You can get a 50-foot roll for like 10 bucks. I put that stuff along the bottom 2 feet, and basically the rabbit is just wandering around foraging. It's not going to jump over and through that. It just doesn't think that way, at least in my experience. It can do it. I've chased rabbits out of my garden. I've literally seen them jump in the air and go right through these holes like they weren't even there. I kind of expected the thing to come out in 2 pieces like in a Bugs Bunny show or something, but anyway, you put this mesh around the bottom. It keeps just about everything out. There might be a couple spots where you didn't sort of seal it up right and they'll get through. And I have all those, I have every kind of herbivore you can possibly imagine for my ecosystem trying to get into my garden all the time. So, if you do get one find its way through, what I do, and the only reason they're in there is because you notice a bunch of your lettuce are missing, right? And on a scale that couldn't be done by a slug. So the approach I take is to just we're in the area where I found the damage. I'll put a couple slices of apple there, and I'll do my best to find where the hole is or guess where the hole is, and I'll sort of double up and try to seal it up, and I'll just watch those slices of apples for a few days. If the rabbit found its way in and it ate your lettuce, it'll come back. It'll keep coming back till it's all gone, or lettuce or whatever the rabbit likes. It's kind of like what's in your garden much more than what's in the woods once it finds its way in. So yeah, plan A, use the they're going to go for they love apple, at least rabbits do anyway. So you put that in, and that's plan A. And hopefully there's no more damage, and you've basically kept it from coming in, and it'll give up and move on. So I picked this time of year to do this because I know that the ground is full of moisture, and there's been lots of frost and heaving and stuff like that, and the root systems in the ground are not in the same sort of strength. Things are easy to rip out of the ground in the spring, and even though it doesn't look very springy, it is technically spring. And a lot of these posts have play, and I can actually hear water underneath it. So some of these, and I think this is one, it's a bit of suction there, but just wiggle it a bit, and holy Moses. Oh my God. 1, 2, 3, yeah, there we go. More suction than anything else. Anyway, that's one way to get them out, but I'm a bit old for this. I think it's better to use your head. Let me show you another trick. All right, so here's one that got some play in it, but made a liar of me. Out she goes. Okay, never mind, let's try another one. All right, so maybe this one, yeah, this one's, oh my God, that's pretty much frozen in there. That one's in there for sure. Wow, good God. Yeah, that one's, it's moving a bit, but it doesn't seem to want to come out. So I think our old friend, good old leverage, I think is what's called for here. We'll just take a piece of rope. This is about 8 feet long, 2 meters and change. Put a big knot in one end here. We basically have a loop, right? Very useful kind of piece of rope. A rope tied in a loop. You can solve a lot of problems like that. Okay, we're going to pass it through and around twice. And put that knot down through. Put it down nice and low. As low as we can get it, and get her tight. Now, there's probably better ways to do this, but the general idea is you put this thing through that, get something to lever off of, like that, and then push down. Boom. No problem. That took almost no strength at all. One of my children could have done that. Alright, so here's a neat little trick. I had to drive a post in, and the post was actually too large in diameter for that post driver to fit over. So what I did was I got one that actually fitted. I got a post with a sharpened point that the post driver would fit. And I'm driving it into the ground here to make a pilot hole. Right? So I'm making a hole in the ground that's smaller in diameter than the post that's actually going to go in. And I've got it in almost to the sort of depth I want. And now I got to pull this thing out. But this time of year, if a post has been in the ground all winter, it's pretty easy to get it out. But if you drive a post straight into the ground this time of year, it's just about impossible to get out because the ground's so wet. It forms like this amazing suction, it just won't come out. So I'm just going to show you that trick that I showed before. I didn't really have the camera angle right to see the knots. I almost caught that in the face right there. Idiot. So anyway, I thought I'd do another shot of using that little rope lever trick. And of course the lighting's wrong on this one. I'm not a professional cameraman. I have no background in this stuff at all. I'm learning it as I go. So sorry for that. If there's enough comments of people asking me to show like a dedicated video on that sort of rope lever trick for pulling out posts, it's probably something people don't have to do very often. But anyway, lever, fulcrum, push, and up she goes, just like that, right? And yeah, you just loop the rope around you use a knot that will come off, right? You wouldn't want to just tie granny knots onto that because you know the amount of force that's required, the knot would tighten and not come off. So. Yeah, if people really want a dedicated video on how I actually do that trick, and it's useful in lots of different applications, I'll definitely make that video happen. So now that I've got the pilot hole in place, I can literally just put that thing in with a rock. And it's got to be a nice and tightly driven in because this post is wider in diameter than that stick. All right, so now we're at the point where we're attaching the fence, and I'm using, if you haven't seen it before, I'll put a link to it at the end of this video if I remember. I think the video is called Some Useful Gardening Knots. If you just search on my channel for the word knots, K-N-O-T-S, you'll find it because it's the only video I did on knots, I think. And this is I'm using what's called the trucker's hitch, right? So it's a knot where you make a little loop, then you grab the rope, pull it like that, and you pull it around what you're trying to tighten from. Whoop. Like that. Right, then you can tighten, right? Because when you're pulling the fence, and then, you can tighten it, and then make it fast, right? Like that. And another approach would just be to have someone pull on the fence while you're doing it, right? But if you're doing it by yourself, and I like to do a lot of stuff by myself. My kids are still a bit young, and my wife's sort of doing her own thing, and she's with the kids and stuff. So she would help if I asked her to. I just don't want to bug her. She's got her own. She's got her own thing going on. So mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, right? So anyway, to keep it nice and straight like that, that's a good way to do it. It's almost like having an extra hand, right? And then the knot just, no matter how tight you make it, the knot just pops out, right? So I'm going to pull this fence around. This is, so I removed the fence that was along the back of those boxes and stuff like that. It was a bit of a process and a lot of, getting frustrated and swearing. It's still the same day. You can see much of the snow is gone. I had a lot of snow here, and this was all snow this morning, and now it's all gone, right? And there's very little left, just just a little bit. Anyway, I pulled the fence away from everything that was holding it down there, and now I've drawn it along here. And there's just a little bit left, maybe 10 feet, probably just enough to reach this post. So I'm going to do that right now. where the rope is in contact with the post, you want it to be on the same level as the top, right? So it's sort of in line. So I'm going to make my knot here. Like that. Trucker's hitch. Put it through the loop. Crank her down. Try to get all that slack out of there. Just a couple half hitches to secure. Alright, that's good. Now, got the hammer and a little stick here somewhere. I'll show you a neat little trick. And this is all stuff I wasn't taught any of this. This is just stuff I figured out. It's been pretty commonsensical type stuff. Alright, so there's the post I want to attach it to there. So right now the fence isn't in contact with the ground. There's a space, right? And I want it to stay down there while I'm nailing this thing in. I'm using these, they're called fence staples, this sort of thing. Right? You don't have to use these. You could use a bent nail. Lots of different ways you can attach a fence, but these work pretty good. So all I do is you just put the stick through the fence and push it down. And that does the job, right? Now it takes it out of true a little bit, but that's not the end of the world. I can compensate a bit. There's a bit of a skill to hammering these things in. Takes a bit of practice. Luckily, the things come in packs of like a couple hundred, so you can screw up a bit, and it isn't the end of the world. If there's any spot where you can't get it really tight with the ground, I mean, you're going to be putting the chicken wire around there anyway, just to make it super critter-proof. So you can just fill in the gaps with the galvanized chicken wire. No big deal. No big deal if it's not perfect. So I got a spot here where the contour of the land has made it such that I can't get this nice and tight. And you know, there's lots of ways to deal with this, and I'm not an expert on this. But for me, I'm sure there's some farmer watching me that's just appalled, but you know, I'm out here on my own and I want to get this done today, and I just pull it with the hammer like this and bang it around the corner. That's good enough for me. And then just hammer it in. That's pretty darn straight. Good enough for me. Whoops. I need one more in here just for good measure. There we go. That leaves leaves a reasonably straight line. Hey, so I thought I'd just finish up this video. I've got, let's say 12, 14, 25 feet, 25, 30 feet of fence left to do, and I'm losing my light, and I'm pretty tired, and it's been an all day affair. I basically started this project removing the posts and replacing the posts and then stretching the fence out. I started around 9 a.m. and it's now like 6:30 p.m. and I think half an hour of me working on this without shooting video. I should be able to get it all closed in. I mean to put some sort of door so I can get like, there are resources that I gather beyond the fence, like rocks and logs and stuff like that. So I do plan to put some kind of small door instead of having to go all the way around the fence so I can go through. But I'm not going to deal with that tonight. I'm pretty spent. But anyway, yeah. Fence on the cheap, part 2. Great success. The next step is to take all of these cold frames and sort of dismantle and remantle them and turn them into beds that go down that way. And I should get a good deal more. Basically, I'm using the same space that I was using for my garden, but I'm going to have, oh my goodness, I don't know, let's say another 5 or 6 4x6 beds. One of them might be 4x8. So that's a lot of area to add in terms of growing just by changing a configuration. So totally worth it. It's been on my mind for all last year. So it's 2020 right now, end of March, and all last year, the whole gardening season, it was on my mind. I thought this setup it doesn't make any sense. I need to change everything, and yeah, this is the right time to do it. And I guess just to speak to putting in posts and putting in fences and stuff like that, the first year that I put a fence in my garden, I did it at the height of like horsefly and mosquito season, and it was tough, really tough. So comparably, this has been pretty pleasant because this is the magic time for people that live in the northern climate. This is people that spend a lot of time outdoors, anglers and that sort of thing. We often call this the magic time because it's warm enough to be outside without being totally miserable, but there's no mosquitoes, there's no black flies, there's no horse flies. It's just kind of wonderful. So anyway, making the best of the situation with regard to being sort of confined to the property. Great opportunity to get around to all of those things that you've been putting off, as long as you don't smash your fingers, cut yourself, break an ankle. Be careful, right? So I hope you found that interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com. And until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching. But I'm having a serious sort of Hank Hill. For those of you that are familiar with the show King of the Hill, I'm having a Hank Hill moment here because I just eyeballed how much additional fencing I would need. I bought a 50-foot roll. And this is the last, literally, it just makes it. Right? Fencing I bought just makes it. Zero waste. Doesn't get much better than that.